All right, GM, everyone. Very good to see so many people here so early. Very impressive, actually. Good turnout. So, congratulations, guys. Look, we've got an amazing panel today. I mean, look at the brands we've got here. Like some of the biggest powerhouses in crypto VC and market making. So it's an honor to have you guys with us today. Look, we've only got 30 minutes, so I really want to get into it so we can get the maximum value for this panel. So we'll start off very quickly just with a quick round of introductions. Maybe Gleb, you can quickly introduce yourself and we'll go further down.
Sure, sounds good. Thank you for having me. First of all, that's a great event. Truly good one. Always a pleasure to be in Hong Kong. I'm Gleb, co-founder of Vortex. We do market making, token advising. We started off initially as market making as our core business, and that was the only service. But the company now actually provides much more than just that. We do liquidity provision, we do investments, we connect with some of the other ecosystem partners for sort of like the complex deals, and we also try to help, apart from just market making, on a lot of other trading aspects. So basically, Vortex is trying to create like an ecosystem for projects where founders can get all of their needs covered.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name's Nenter. I'm a partner at Animoca Ventures, the venture investment arm for Animoca Brands, based out in Hong Kong. I think most people think of gaming when they think of Animoca, Web3 gaming, metaverse, but I think we're much more than that. In addition to just investments, we also we provide basically the full service for Web3 companies, market making, tokenomics, token advisory, etc. Happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Kelvin Ko, one of the co-founders of Spartan Group. We're basically a Web3 investor and advisor, and I focus mainly on the investment part, where we run a crypto hedge fund as well as 2 early-stage venture funds.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see everyone here this morning. My name is Maria. I'm one of the general partners at Electric Capital. Electric Capital is a crypto-focused VC firm. We have a little bit over $2 billion under management, and we invest at the seed and Series A stage. We invest across layer ones, DeFi, NFTs, consumer-facing applications, and really excited to be here. Good to see everyone.
Okay, thank you, guys. So let's just get right into it. So, I want to know, what's coming next. I mean, we're seeing DEXs and Hyperliquid that's doing very, very well, but a lot of new token launches and don't perform, at least in their current state and the traditional ways that they launched over the last few years. We haven't been seeing huge returns, or maybe you have. And if so, I would love to know what they are. But what is coming next in terms of, the niches of the projects that you're most excited about? I know there's been a wave of AI agents and DeFi, as they say, with AI and DeFi that I'm really interested in. But in general, now narratives seem to move so quickly that within 72 hours we're on to the next one. This whole kind of meme coin culture has just really messed up with the industry, in my opinion. So yeah, I would love to know where do you see the next narratives being, and are they gonna which narratives are gonna stick for returns for your LPs? Nenter?
Sure, I'll go first. Look, I mean, I think for Animoca, we're ecosystem investors, but obviously there's going to be certain areas that we have more interest or focus on. I can't speak for the broader Animoca group, because I think we invest in basically all pockets of Web3. But what I will say, our focus for the venture fund at the moment, I'm more focused on DeFi, RWA, and to a certain extent DePIN. I think for us, it's really about where do we see, look, the new capital inflow, right, institutional, whatnot. I think that's sort of the first stop, and I think you can see, for example, in the example of RWAs, you're seeing something like Mantra OM, right? Why is that sticking out versus every other sector? And I think there's a clear bid behind it. Not saying that price is the only thing that matters, but I definitely think there's strong tailwinds for DeFi. There's a lot of undervalued projects, even in the liquid market today, when you look at certain metrics. And also, I believe in the tokenization of everything. Larry Fink said it better than anyone. I think eventually global capital markets, in addition to most things we know, will be tokenized. So I think RWA and DeFi are sort of the two areas I'm the most excited about.
I had a few things. I think first of all, what's encouraging to see is that in every cycle we see a new new verticals emerging, right? So in the last cycle we had DeFi, we had NFTs, and we had gaming, right? And in this cycle we had meme coins, we had obviously a lot of AI projects, right? And we have DePIN, and then we're even seeing some investments in DeSci, right? So I think overall it's good for the ecosystem that there are new verticals emerging and new builders coming into the ecosystem. But having said that, I mean, obviously I think the general sentiment at the moment is quite pessimistic overall, right? And we generally don't try to chase narratives very much, right? We stick to our fundamental views and generally invest with a pretty long-term kind of lens, particularly on the venture side. But just to speak briefly about meme coins, right? I mean, obviously there have been a number of events recently that have created quite a bit of frustration in the community about value extraction from some of these meme coin projects. I think the initial sort of movement started out as something that's very fun and something that I think the average investor felt they could make money, right? And the genesis of that was because you had a lot of these more reputable projects, right, that are VC invested, and they're all coming to market at valuations that were very, very high, right? And retail investors feel like they have no edge in that. They're just basically going to be buying the VC backs, and they hated that, and that's how the meme coin sort of cycle came about. So I think the speculation probably got a little bit too excessive over the last few months. And we're obviously seeing some unsavory behavior in the space, which I think needs to be reset, recorrected. But overall, I think the outlook for the space is better than it's ever been in many, many years, particularly given what's happened in the US.
Yeah, there are a few trends that I really like looking at. We follow developers pretty closely at Electric Capital. We put out this report called the Developer Report. And one thing that's really striking to me is how global crypto is now. India is the #1 country for new developers. A lot of, actually most developers in crypto are coming out of Asia. And so I think crypto, when it started out, had this ambition to be global and decentralized, and now we're really seeing that. And so one thing I'm pretty excited about is what these builders around the world are going to create. Mainly, we've seen a lot of projects coming out of the US, out of Europe, and so I think more and more we're going to be seeing developers coming out of other regions of the world. And I think that's coming at a really interesting convergence where we have lower transaction rates, we have, higher transaction rates, lower fees. A lot of these things that when I entered the space in 2018 felt like a dream where, hey, we can actually have like sub 1 cent transactions. These things are reality now. And so one thing that I'm hoping for is that we're going to see a lot more consumer facing applications. I'm still unsure if it's too early for consumer, but I'm really, really hoping that it is not, because I do feel like all the pieces are there. And I do think, one positive thing maybe to come out of the meme coins is to see the number of people who are, who are mainstream, who are retail, coming in and participating in the space. And hopefully that does translate into some consumer adoption.
I actually want to also to pick up on what Nenter said earlier. I think that RWAs are definitely going to be a pretty major trend. I mean, it's already kind of like a solidified trend in a sense that RWAs are a very great interest to VCs, to market makers, to everybody else. But I think that what's really curious is that projects like this also kind of, unlike some of the OG projects and like some of like the blockchain narratives, they also try to attract some of the audience that is not essentially Web3 one. Like a lot of the RWAs that I was speaking to this year and last year, they're essentially trying to target a very large user base, which is not necessarily very familiar with Web3. And that's kind of like a catalyst towards bringing more mass adoption and more recognition overall into crypto. And projects like this, I think they're also going to be much more clear to the people who are not that familiar with crypto, because like when they analyze tokens, it's kind of like hard for them if they're not familiar with it to see like what's the actual value. Even though like it could be explained, it still takes time for them to understand. But when they're seeing the RWA's project, it's pretty clear to them that those kind of things, they're backed by some tangible assets, some real assets that are there for them to, well, not necessarily touch, but at least it's like more concrete for them. So I guess it's definitely a major trend towards seeing more institutions, more people overall who are not yet encrypted to enter it.
So Gleb, you're obviously a liquidity expert, right? Being a market maker. I think we've all been shocked by Mantra being up like 40% and the whole market being down constantly. Like, how is it that is actually happening? How is the Mantra price defying the whole market? Like, you know, is that legitimate? And also, is this a sign that RWA, if and when it gets mainstream adoption, I know they did that $1 billion deal with Damak in the UAE, which is where I live. Like, could RWA break off like from the general, you know, bull and bear that the rest of the market would see, given the Mantra price?
Well, I guess it's really hard to say if it's actually going to pull us out of the bear right now. The market has literally been rocked by 2 presidents. I guess it's kind of like a pivotal moment for the space overall. But in a sense that RWAs could be trendsetter, I guess that's definitely true. I think RWAs are still very small compared to what they can become. I'd say extremely small, like by a very significant margin. And probably what we're seeing is that there is obviously a bunch of legal scrutiny. There's obviously a bunch of regulation that has to be overcome in order for RWAs to actually be freely used and freely accessed. But I guess once that becomes sort of like more, once again, more concrete and more specific, once there's more regulation, I think that RWAs could essentially attract tremendous liquidity. Probably not even billions, but perhaps trillions of dollars. Because obviously the assets that are like real estate, well, real estate is one of the biggest assets, but even something smaller, it's obviously extremely more bigger than crypto. And once that, at least a part of that gets tokenized, I think that definitely this could be trendsetter for the space overall. But I also think there's a danger, though. I think that once that happens, we're risking to have the space kind of like divided in the sense that there's going to be, the same what ETFs done to the space, I think there's also going to be a slight risk that this happens with RWAs as well.
Okay, guys, look, I'm sure there's a lot of projects in the room that would love to get investments from some of the VCs up here. So I would love to hear your insights about how your investment theses may have changed, or the way that you evaluate projects over the last, 6 to 12 months or so compared to, the last cycle. Maybe Maria, you can take that one.
It's a great question. I think in a lot of ways it hasn't changed. Maybe I'll just speak to for myself. I really like to invest in founders who are generally very crypto native, are creative, because I think we haven't seen all the experimentation that can happen in the space yet. There's a lot of creative things that can happen with tokenomics. There are a lot of creative things that can happen with the way that you interface with users and incentivized users, that I think it takes someone who's quite crypto native and has been in the space and has experienced a lot of these projects to really understand and put together. And I think that's one cool thing that we're seeing right now, is a lot of projects are kind of mixing and matching things that have come before. And so, yeah, I think it really has to do with founders who are creative, founders who are crypto native, founders who understand how to engage with the community and tell their story, as well as founders who are long-term aligned. We're a venture firm, and so we generally invest for the long term. And so our timelines, we're looking at this relationship is going to be 5 years, 10 years. That's really the timeline we're looking at. And so we're looking for founders who are thinking along those same lines.
Yeah, I'll add a few things. So similar to what Maria said, our approach hasn't changed, right? So at the end of the day, we're looking for strong founders that are going to build things that we think people are going to use, right? But what has changed over time is that obviously with the emergence of new verticals, we're also starting to invest in some of these new areas like AI and DeepIn and so on. And then the other thing that I've also noticed over the years is that we have gone from being quite heavy on infrastructure investments to doing more on the application layer. And every new fund we launch, that ratio keeps moving towards the application layer, which I think is the right approach. And then I'd say the last thing is, I think we, as an industry, need to think about what's the best way for these venture investments to play out, because clearly, there's a lot of resentment towards the current structure, right? And I think part of that is a function of how much venture capital was raised over the last couple of years. And part of that was also, I think, this new format that we have, which, enforces, at least a minimum 1 year lockup and multi-year vesting. And so you end up with this low float, high FDV problem, which nobody likes. And some people are even calling for the return of the ICO era, right? So I think we need to, get to a mechanic, that sort of works, for the market, such that VCs can make money, but even when these projects come to market, there's still room for them to grow.
Yeah, I think both Maria and Kelvin, I agree with both their points. Not too much to add. What I will say is that the one thing different that we've been doing more, even on projects where we're not leading, but have we're one of the potential lead investors. We try to really help the founding team navigate through sort of from a structural perspective, just as Calvin mentioned, right? There's a lot of pushback on VC-led deals, low float, high FDV, the unlocks, the vesting schedules, et cetera. So we're, floating around a lot of different ideas and ways to sort of, you can't satisfy everyone, right? But at least to have somewhat more of a fair distribution.
So, what, for example?
Well, I think there's a lot. It depends on the project. It depends on a number of different variables, right? One, for example, I think Hasib had mentioned this before about potentially, having, let's say, a X amount of lock period followed by, daily, just a constant daily unlock, right? Kind of when you have sort of these milestone dates, it tends to, clusters of trading activity tends to happen. So I think just to normalize that would probably mitigate some of that price action you don't want to see.
I think there has to be enough liquidity, right? Enough tokens in circulation such that there is price discovery when a token launches, right? Oftentimes you see new token projects launch and there's only 5 to 10% of tokens circulating, and so the valuation is artificially inflated, right? And investors know that there's only one way that these token projects are gonna go, right? Because you have the airdrop farmers dumping the tokens, and then at some point the VCs unlock, and then there's more supply coming onto the market. Whereas I think if you have a mechanism where there is greater circulating supply on day one and proper price discovery, then this problem goes away.
Yeah, and I guess similar to what Kelvin said, this might not be true for all of you. Maybe this might not be true for the majority of people, but I guess it's kind of like the overall sentiment is that since the meme coins became the main narrative, and this was a while ago, I think that what a lot of projects lack is instead of like similar to 2021 or something like this, instead of actually focusing on building something long term, I think a lot of projects have become too narrative centric. I think that a lot of them are essentially chasing narrative they don't necessarily understand, or chasing narrative which is not necessarily a actually long term one. And eventually what happens that is even the long term narratives, eventually they kind of become less attention-centric. They become less hype-driven, and a new narrative appears, and the projects that were built just around the narrative, they obviously fail. And I honestly think that a lot of projects in the space have suffered from that.
So this is a bit of a selfish question, because my bags are really down right now. You guys obviously have an amazing view of the industry. You must have amazing networks. You must have amazing data points. Are we sliding into a bear market, or do you think there's more to go in this bull run? Maybe Gleb, you can start, and then we can go across.
That's actually a very good question. To be completely honest, I think that what we're seeing right now is actually a pivotal moment itself. I'm not necessarily thinking like insurance from a long term, like kind of difference. I think that basically what happens right now is that the market itself, as I mentioned, extremely large portions of value were extracted by different rocks, by different launchers itself. The macro is obviously very tough as well. I think what really happens right now is that I wouldn't really say that the whole market would turn into bear right now, but I think that a lot of the ecosystems will definitely suffer. Like similar to what smaller altcoins experienced last year, like this bleeding and this kind of like understanding that they will not return to 2021 all-time highs. I think similar things could happen to bigger coins as well. I think that what crypto is seeing right now, this obviously has to be confirmed as well, but just the hypothesis that I think what people are seeing right now, that more and more tokens are, some of them are becoming obsolete, some of them are becoming sort of like probably less needed or just less watched upon. And basically we're seeing more and more like tokens that are similar to Bitcoin or Ethereum. Like basically we're seeing bigger projects get more attention and smaller projects get less attention. So I think that's really what solidifies the current trend. And in terms of like the bear market itself, once again, I think that what we're seeing right now is a pivotal moment. It will all depend upon the tariffs play, how it's going to play out. It depends upon the war as well in Ukraine and in Israel, how it's going to play out. And once the macro solidifies, I think it's up to Trump, up to the orange president.
I think to generalize, are we going to bear market is unfair, because I think you have to segment the market, our market, into a lot of different areas, right? You have, for the majors like Bitcoin, obviously with ETF flows, states, governments, etc., adopting. I think that in itself, I would say no. We're not in a bear market by any means. On the meme coin, AI agent side, where Gleb mentioned, there's been a lot of value, probably billions extracted over the last couple of months even, via these, launchers, deployers, some MMs. I think that's going to take some time to recover. Like Kelvin said, right, you need that bid behind it, and you're just not seeing that. I think it's going to take some time. And as I mentioned before, I do believe DeFi RWA, that's sort of where the new capital that's going to be flowing in, the newer institutional capital, that's where that's going to be the first stop. And for us, we're heavy consumer investors, even consumer X gaming. I think we probably have the most consumer-based apps in our portfolio. So still very bullish on that area. But I do think it takes its time to work. The capital will take some time to work its way through all these different sectors.
Well, I think the market sentiment shifts very quickly in crypto, right? 2 months ago, when Trump won the election, people thought, okay, we're in a multi-year bull market now. Things are just going to keep going up, right? And then two months on, we're kind of like, okay, we're in a bear market now, and things are going to stay this way. So, crypto sentiment just flips around so quickly, right? So I think the important thing is not to get caught in the short-term sentiment. I still think that the ingredients of bull market are still largely intact. And Bitcoin clearly sort of shows that. I think altcoins is in a more tricky situation because there's so much supply coming on, not just from VCs vesting, but also from new tokens that are being created every day. So I think it's essentially, if you're sort of playing altcoins, that you are able to identify the right ones to invest in. And if you look at, there's still a handful of, altcoins that do very well and, even beat the performance of Bitcoin. So you've got to be very, very selective when it comes to altcoins.
Yeah, I feel like it's a funny time to be asking that question. We have a Bitcoin ETF, we have an Ethereum ETF, and possibly more coming down the line. I think the genie is really out of the bottle when it comes to crypto. It feels like we've won, and now it's just a matter of time to get more and more adoption and more capital coming in. I do wonder if, and I agree, the sentiment is very poor right now. A lot of that coming from a lot of people losing a lot of money from meme coins and other things. I wonder if we're just at a juncture where the way that we value tokens is changing, and that shift is going to be challenging. And so one thing I'm pretty excited about is how revenue is starting to flow back to token holders, and how that's going to affect and shift the way that we value tokens. I think we're kind of maybe on a precipice of something that's a little bit unknown, and that will probably cause some pain in the market. But again, I think overall, our trajectory is incredibly positive right now.
I really wanted to add just a bit of what Maria said. I think that's a wonderful statement. That's also kind of like what I wanted to expand on as well. I think that we're essentially approaching the point where tokens are indeed kind of valued differently. And that's a very pivotal moment for the altcoins as well. What I mentioned that a lot of the smaller projects and a lot of the altcoins that were created 2021 or like back even earlier, I think what they're seeing is that really struggling in the sense that the things that were considered to be concrete back then, they're not working anymore. And a lot of the tokens today are kind of like facing a moment where they either have to pivot, and when I say a lot, I mean like probably the majority of the market, or they're going to be that. So that's definitely scary, not in the sense that the market is dying, but in the sense that a lot of the market probably has to be reworked.
All right, guys, we don't have long left, unfortunately, so I want to give the audience a chance to ask a question. If anyone wants to ask a question, just raise your hand. If not, I'll go into my next question, but you can if you like. So any questions for our esteemed panel? Okay, so while you guys think about that, I'll go into my next question, which is, obviously, you guys invest in, I'm sure you've got some projects in your portfolios that are unicorns, even at today's prices. What are some of the projects that you've invested in, in the last 1 or 2 years that are coming to market that maybe the mainstream haven't found out about yet, but you're really excited about in your current portcos?
Well, I think on the infrastructure side, Berachain just went live not too long ago. Pretty excited about the 300 plus consumer dApps building there, and see how that evolves. Pretty excited that the Monad testnet also just launched, I believe, yesterday. So yeah, those pretty excited about.
Yeah, so we have quite a few of our podcasts already come to market, but the ones that are still sort of building and coming soon, hopefully. One of them recently sort of did a massive NFT sale, Faberbond, right? They're on the Ronin network. The NFT sale was oversubscribed, which was nice to see for a change. So it shows the amount of excitement that there is in the game. So so look out for that.
+1 to Monad's testnet. Incredibly excited. I'm pretty pumped to try a lot of the apps there. Abstract Chain, which is a consumer-focused L2, also launched with this really cool feature around being able to live stream a lot of the apps that are happening. And so there's some really interesting experiments they're doing there. Magic Eden is another portfolio company, and I've just always been incredibly impressed with the founding team. They have a wallet that has a lot of incredible traction right now as well. And I think there are also some that are flying under the radar. We're investors in a team called Atrium that has created a character called Quack. I don't know if you guys have seen, but they have over 3 million followers on Instagram. And so a lot of teams that are kind of building things for consumer and reaching mass adoption as well.
I guess it's kind of like a different question to ask in the sense that our core business is still market making, but I'm happy to share that Vortex currently the combined market cap of our clients is exceeding 5 billion. So it's also something we're proud of, and we're happy to help some of our clients manage those pivotal moments.
Okay, so we just got 2 minutes left. So let's just give some final words of wisdom to our audience. I'm sure there's many retail and potentially smaller funds in the room that would love to get to your guys' level. So, and obviously our VC liquidity partner here as well. So what would be your kind of closing statements for investing going into 2025 that we can take away and make more money?
I think I agree with my fellow panelists. I think you really have to take a longer-term view on most things than just a simple day trade. I think and ultimately, I think it's we have a lot of macro tailwinds behind us.
Maybe for me, I think it's really important to never stop learning. Crypto moves so fast, and I constantly feel like there's so much more that I don't know. And I think just the longer I've been in crypto, the more I feel like there is to learn. That and always reassess your priors and always reassess whether your assumptions are still holding true.
I think from our perspective, this year we're trying to be a bit more nimble, right? So within the hedge fund itself, we're trying to consolidate the number of positions we have and really focus on the ones that we have a lot of conviction and just basically make more sizable bets. because the market environment is shifting so quickly, and sentiment can shift so dramatically. So we just need to be a lot quicker and more agile than we've been historically.
And I guess not an advice, just what Vortex personally does. We're seeing much more investments made from our side and from our partners into RWAs and into AI. And the last closing statement from us is that even though there has been a few narratives around AI lately in crypto, like the AI agents and etc., I don't think that AI is at all implemented into blockchains the way it could be. So we're definitely very excited about exploring more projects that are going to be solving this gap one way or another.
All right, guys. Well, look, thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to see so many faces. Thank you to Hack Seasons for having us. And yeah, we'll see you guys here next time. Thank you, everyone.